Welcome. This is a video, a resume of a part of the series, and I believe that large part of this resume has to do with associations with the perfect storm, which is the pandemic, and antibiotic resistance. Perfect storm, the CDC called the combination of the pandemic, COVID-19, together with AMR, a perfect storm. In order to solve this perfect storm, we have to know better who we are and what a virus really is and causes, and not causes on its own. We have to solve the first, or we have to solve first the paradigms about the virus and the infection. First, the paradigms about the virus and the infection. Paradigms around how we see a virus. Why in the cycle of the virus, the pathogen, is not found intact in the cell. I'll show you publications and videos in a moment that shows that the virus is not intact in the cell. What is it that is found inside the cell when it's not intact? What is inside the cell? There are certainly parts of the virus inside the cell. And what is inside the cell? Is it functional? Or how? Why can't our scientists isolate the virus inside cells? I mean the complete virus. Why can they only isolate outside the cells, in exosomes, for instance? Exosomes are kind of bags or bubbles that fit a virus. How does the virus manage to hack cells when it can't enter them intactly, when it's not complete? How can the cell make several intact copies of something that is not intact anymore? Here you can notice that the spikes, which are green, these were the spikes of the virus, and the virus shell, part of it, the yellow, do not even enter the cell. What entered the cell is the supposed genome of the virus, but it's not a functional genome, so it's rather a piece of DNA that is not functional. I think this is a very interesting video that shows the approach, or probably better, the capturing of a virus by a cell. The capturing, it first captures, stabilizes, and so on. And this is a photo where you can see that this is a cell, this is the outside, this is the inside. The DNA that is not functional on its own, because never a DNA is functional on its own. So only this non-functional DNA gets into the cell, and the spikes and other elements of the virus stay outside. So it's different what you generally see, where you see clearly a virus infecting a cell, invading it, and then generally the image or the video or the GIF stops. But it does not enter. When only part, a very limited part, enters, and it's not functional. Who and what are we, and what makes us healthy or sick? We have to know that better, because we have all these paradigms, and we are not getting out of the pandemic, and some other pandemics or co-infections are appearing simultaneously, and then there is the fear for the perfect storm of this happening together, with antibiotic resistance and increasing antibiotic resistance. Here. So here you can see this is from CDC, somewhere in 2020, I suppose, during COVID, of course, where they tell us they think it is a perfect storm, or COVID-19 created a perfect storm, so that is worse than COVID. And the US lost progress, don't say how many years of progress, combating resistance in 2020 alone. So they're not speaking about 2021, 2022 or 2023. So only in 2020 resistance, antibiotic resistance, etc., and that's because of it in hospitals increased with 15%. 80% of patients hospitalized received antibiotics, so that's their worry. They're stopping short of saying that they were given antibiotics without any reason. They don't say that. I don't think it would be right to say that. And they say also setbacks to fighting resistance can and must be temporary. And they also say that data being unavailable leads to resistant infections spreading undetected and untreated. So that's part of the loss in progress and in the combating the antibiotic resistance. So this is quite serious. It's not really answered. It's quite a one or more paradigms on its own. Here, who and what are we, and what makes us healthy or sick? I would at least say that we don't know enough. I summed up quite some paradigms because we were never able to see and interpret correctly the associations with the pandemic, and I will show you that the associations and the symptoms were there years and even millennia before this pandemic, let's say, popped up. So we don't know enough, or we don't know how to use it. It's serious anyhow, because this could be any other, because if there's associations that lead to pandemics or to antibiotic resistance, then we weren't able to see it. We must be able to see symptoms and the marks. There are so many right now, and that's one of the things I will show. So apart from the paradigms, I say we don't know enough because we were never able to see through the associations that are like symptoms, like marks for the pandemic and the consequent antibiotic resistance. Pandemic problems that accumulate in layers. This is a question. Is a pandemic a number of problems that accumulate in layers in time? There's a question. So does a pandemic need these associations to happen in before for a pandemic to be able to take hold? For instance, taking hold, what is that? SARS and MERS were there for years, since 2002, but they were not able to take hold, while COVID took hold more or less right away. The current pandemic revealed several epidemics of diseases and genetic traits that are associated with hybridization. I will show them in a minute. Years and even millennia before the current pandemic and perfect storm took hold. Okay, I do not want to take too long to get there, to get to the associations. What's so different about Y-DNA haplogroup R1b, which dominates in Western Europe and large part of the world, and R1a is pretty much the same situation. In this paper, videos, I will demonstrate that R1b experienced duplications and deletions in its genome that led to genome instability, and instability leads to degeneration, and degeneration leads to diseases and epidemics or pandemics. So when we know this, we know that these duplication and deletions that are there for 4,000 years, and we don't know enough if they progressed or if they stay stable. There are several indications that they got more unstable. Unstable leads to more deletions lead to more instability. It's like a vicious circle. So it's very serious, so you have to be able to monitor it, and the person that should speak about it are not mentioning it. They don't make it public. Probably it's just not enough studied. So R1b, is the most recent haplogroup. Came from nothing, from nowhere, 8,000 years ago. That means it was not in the places that it 4,000 years later will dominate, like for instance Western Europe together with AR1A dominates the whole developed world, who experienced this pandemic, by the way. Coming from nothing and becoming dominant is something typical for hybridization, which is similar but not equal to domestication. Example, just an example. There were many horses, wild horses, but today they are all extinct, these wild horses, and all horses today are domesticated horses. As a matter of fact, from a single place, region, not a big region, that is also associated with where the haplogroup R1b, I should say R1a and B come from. And in fact, these horses were domesticated by haplogroups R1b and R1a. In fact, these horses were domesticated in that particular region, in a steppe region in Eurasia, by humans that are hybrids on their own, of the haplogroups R1b and R1a. So possibly they hybridized themselves, or they were hybridized and have the knowledge to hybridize animals. Further, in this paper, I will claim that haplogroup R1b is one of the most hybridized and most recently hybridized haplogroups we have on this planet. It's also worth noting that all ancient hybridized haplogroups have now become extinct haplogroups or haplotypes, but that's not really that different. They have a different genome haplotype. I say haplotype because Neanderthal is a haplotype B006, and they all are now extinct. I'm not sure if this B006 is extinct. There's later hybrids. They call them archaics. That were Botai people that lived like 4,000 years ago, or a little bit more. I'm not sure if they are alive, absorbed, or extinct as well. So I should later find out B003 and B001. Because they differ in the autosome and not in the Y DNA or mitochondrial DNA, they are not called haplogroups. They're called haplotypes. But in fact, the haplotype is much stronger because it's present over a much bigger autosome. The autosome is, I'm not sure, 100 or much more times bigger base pairs than the haplotypes that are studied much more than the haplotype, probably for practical reasons in the first place. I will finish this video and I will show you how haplogroups move from Nova Zembla, from Siberia, when they arrive over the ice, go to the Altai Mountains. It's a typical route in the deep past, 35,000 years ago, and maybe million years ago, and it's used by recent hybrids like Air 1A, and so they come in here, but they are not able to stay here. Who is able to stay here is the Amarant DNA, or the Amarants. So Air 1A probably makes use of logistics of the descendants of Amarants that are more resistant because they are not hybrids, and then move rather as quick as possible to Altai. There's also caves in Altai, but there must be other favorable conditions, probably climate coming from south. This is subtropical and this is Arctic. So from Altai they move to the south of Kazakhstan. Here it's already the dot, or the area is already south of Kazakhstan, and in the next it is already in India, southern India, but in a much lesser extent. It's clearly in the south of Pakistan, in the Indus Valley. It's clearly on the foots of the Himalaya, here west of Nepal, and here probably at the top of Nepal. So more about this in the next video. Thanks a lot. Hope to see you soon.